We are becoming a spiritual species, and we know that life itself is precious. If we have no compassion for those who have no compassion, what's the difference between us? There is none. If we judge anything, if we lash out against what we perceive as the darkness, we ourselves enter the darkness. There is nothing in the world more precious or less precious than you, and that applies to everyone who is a soul. In other words, Donald Trump, like you, is a soul. Donald is pursuing external power. There is no value in pursuing external power. You create emotional violence. Nations create physical violence. This doesn't make him bad. It doesn't make him good. It can make his behavior quite cruel and disconnected. So what are we going to do about Donald Trump? Welcome back. This is an important podcast to me. They're all important to me because you're with me. And this one's important to me not only because of that, but because of the subject. In the last podcast, I introduced you to one of my favorite sentences of all time. It was written in 1905 by a poet, novelist, philosopher, Santayana. And Santayana said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those who do remember the past are watching the past repeat itself now. So nothing I say in this podcast will be new to them, as horrifying as it might be. But for those of you who don't remember the past beyond what you learned in school, what was given to you in school, I ask you to look up an event called World War II. Did you do that? Did you check ChatGPT? Did you Google it? We discussed a little bit of World War II in the last podcast. It was one of the most horrendous experiences in our history. Human history has always been one of brutality. This was not the exception, but the magnitude and intensity of it was its culmination. Nothing before could match this. 80 million people died in this thing called World War II, and as its name tells you, the entire world was at war. On one side was the Europe, and eventually the United States. On the other side was Japan, Germany, Russia for a while, and Italy. How it happened was not important in this context as the reality of its happening and what we can learn from it now. An insecure man was elected to high office in Germany, the prime minister. He was not imposing himself. He did not assume rule. He did not take command. He was elected. His name was Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, from the very first moments, addressed the deep fears in his country. We have been humiliated, he said, and he was referring to the loss, the defeat of Germany in World War I. Believe it or not, World War II was preceded by another World War, World War I. That's worth your attention if you want to look that up. But I'm bringing your attention now to World War II. Germany was defeated. It was left in ruins, as was most of Europe. And so when Hitler was elected, he said, "We have been humiliated. We are a great nation, and we will make our nation great again. We will make Germany the great power again that it is. And we will do that by pursuing external power. which you know now is manipulation and control and the ability to do that. For example, Hitler had a target audience. He did not like this audience, this population. It was the Jews. And so his propaganda pictured the Jews as vermin, scurrying through sewers, filthy, infested with fleas, disease-carrying, disgusting, needing to be exterminated forever. And that's what he attempted to do. He called that the final solution. And since then, others have repeated it also. In Rwanda in 1984, the Hutsis, who were in the process of attempting to exterminate the other tribe they were sharing Rwanda with, called the other tribe cockroaches. Now we have an administration that has a target population, and those are Hispanic speakers. And the president of this new administration, Donald Trump, has labeled this target population rapist and terrorist. That's absurd. Mexico is a huge country. It's got gangs like we do. It's got good people like we do. But it's a fantasy. It is not a fantasy. It is a deliberate attempt to dehumanize a target population, to bring together the population of the United States with a focus on fear. Well, you can see this is not original to Donald Trump. It's not original at all, but it's happening now. And for most of us who don't know about World War II, much less World War I, this may be a surprise, because Adolf Hitler led his people into ruin. The Germans saw themselves as superior to all other people, and all other Germans who weren't white, who weren't of a particular bloodline called Aryan. And they called those people, Aryan, Übermenschen, means supermen, superhumans. And they rounded up this target population of 6 million non-Aryans, most of them Jews and many of them gypsies, everyone who was an Aryan, and put them into concentration or death camps. These are not little places with shacks and barbed wires around them. They were huge, well-designed facilities extending for acres, with barracks, and in those barracks the Jews slept on boards. Not bunk beds, bunk boards. And they were worked until they became skeletal, because they weren't fed very much food, and then they were murdered in the most efficient ways that the German army could. They were put into chambers, told to take off their clothes. They're going to get showers because they're all dirty. And instead of water came poisonous gas, leaving a pile of naked corpses. What they left behind could then be looted, although it was nothing by then, and then they were cremated. That's just part of World War II. The other was the horror of the war itself. Historians had to give it a new name. Total warfare. No one was safe. 2 bombs were dropped on 2 cities in Japan. That finally ended the war. In the process, it instantly incinerated the populations of 2 major cities in Japan, and those people who weren't incinerated died a painful death of radiation poisoning. German submarines patrolled the Atlantic. Their target, anything that floated that wasn't German, particularly convoys bringing supplies to the Allies. That was America, Europe. Didn't matter who was on those ships. The German submarine commanders had one instruction: sink them, kill them, destroy them. And they did. They were very effective. I ask you to look at World War II, not to judge it. I ask you to look at Adolf Hitler, not to judge him, although virtually everyone on the earth does. Don't be one of them. We have a new consciousness now. It's not limited to the five senses. And it has a new understanding of power. The new understanding of power is the alignment of your personality with your soul. The old consciousness doesn't and can't even recognize soul. To them, it's just a word, mostly from Christian religion, theology, or history. But from the new consciousness, it's a name that applies to a part of you that you know exists, a part of you that existed before you were born, and a part of you that will exist after you die. And we're calling that a soul. You could call it Atman. That's what Hindus would probably call it. It's the part of you that's immortal. And if you want to know if you have one, just ask yourself, are you more than a body and a mind? What do you feel? If you're five sensory, your answer will be, what else is there? If you're multisensory, you will know you are more than a body and a mind. And that more is the soul. And power now requires you to use your lifetime to align your personality with that more, with that soul, your soul. The intentions of your soul, of every soul, are harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. And as you become one who walks in the earth school, and through whom the energy of your soul flows freely without obstruction, you become authentically powerful. That's the new context. The context in which we can look at World War II, and the context through which and in which we can look at the administration of Donald Trump and all those who are drawn to it. First, they are limited to the five senses. An individual who's limited to the five senses cannot understand multisensory perception because there is nothing in the experience of this person that they can use to anchor what I share with you and what you share with one another. To them, non-physical reality, a part of your personality that is immortal, and yourself as reincarnated part of a soul, is delusion or fantasy or imagination. But to multisensory humans, it's our world now. This is the big change in human perception, in human understanding, in human experience, and it's one half complete. It is arriving with amazing velocity within the span of 3 human generations. Five sensory consciousness, the old consciousness, evolved over a long time, 300,000 years at least. And if you begin your counting earlier, more than 1 million years ago. This new human consciousness is arriving fast, faster than a heartbeat, faster than a blinking eye, from the perception of the old evolutionary time. And we're in it. Half of us are in it. Half of us aren't. And this is this moment in time that is completely unique. Not that every moment isn't. But never before have humans stood in this place, with one foot in the old consciousness and one foot in the new. The old consciousness limited to the five senses and understanding power as necessary to survival, to our very being, as manipulation and control, and the new consciousness looking at themselves as incarnations of an immortal soul, and power as alignment of themselves with their soul. Wow, quite a change. Now, if we all had the old consciousness, we would be able to sort out the world easily into the good guys and the bad guys. In World War II, the Nazis were the bad guys. We were the good guys. It's not so easy anymore. Because through the lens of the new consciousness, and it's not just a lens, it's an experience, it's a way of being, it's everything that we are. There is no good and there is no bad. There is what is, and the rest of it is how we perceive it. How you experience something depends upon how you hold it. The new consciousness also shows us that our personalities are not single, monolithic things, that sometimes are happy, sometimes are sad, sometimes angry, sometimes jealous, sometimes joyful. That our personalities have many parts, some of them originating in fear, such as anger, jealousy, resentment, competitiveness, overwhelm, anxiety, and some originating in love, such as gratitude, appreciation, contentment, caring, patience, and awe of the universe. And with this new perception comes a new ability, the ability to choose between the experiences of one part of a personality and the experiences of another. You have many parts. When you were five sensory, when anyone is five sensory, if that person became angry, they'd say, I'm angry. Now, we can say much more accurately, a frightened part of my personality that's angry is active in me now. And that perspective gives that person the opportunity to choose to act from that anger or to choose instead to act from a loving part of the personality, the part that's grateful or appreciative or content. And if you decide, while you're experiencing the frightened part of your personality, to act instead from a loving part of your personality, you are on a spiritual path. That is the creation of authentic power. When you are angry, when you are jealous, when you are despairing, when you are tired, when you are done with life, when you can't stand someone else, when you can't stand yourself, you are experiencing a frightened part of your personality. And in that moment, you can put your attention, using your will, using your volition, your free will, to move your attention into a loving part of your personality, a time when you were loved and loving and you knew it, and then choose to act or speak from that part of your personality while you are experiencing the frightened part. The physical sensations that you find inside your body when you look, that's called emotional awareness, are always painful. And the thoughts are always critical and judgmental. I'm so stupid. He's so stupid. Why am I even here? I can't understand this. Why am I even here? I understood all this a long time ago. These are the kind of things that the frightened parts of your personality experience. The loving parts experience differently, and you can choose to act and speak from a loving part while you're experiencing a frightened part. That's the point of power. That's the moment of creating authentic power. And as you do that again and again, you challenge a frightened part of your personality that was active. You don't try to heal it, embrace it, surrender to it, make it better, please it. None of those things are helpful. Instead, you experience it fully, so you know what it is in your life, and you'll find it familiar, very familiar. And then you challenge it. It doesn't mean going to war with it. It means choosing to move beyond its control, choosing not to be controlled by it while you're experiencing it. And a frightened part of your personality is very attractive. It's magnetically attractive. Every frightened part of every personality knows that it's right and righteous Look at every fundamentalist. Doesn't matter what faith, what belief, what organization. That is the definition of a fundamentalist. Right and righteous. Now here's the thing. From the new consciousness, if you judge that person, what's the difference between you and that person? That person is judging you. That person is condemning you because you're different, because you're white instead of black or black instead of white, because you're Hutu instead of Tutsi or Tutsi instead of Hutu if you live in Rwanda. In other words, from the new perception, the new consciousness, we can see that if we have no compassion for those who have no compassion, what's the difference between us? There is none. Another way of saying this is that if we judge anything, and if we judge it, we're always condemning it, saying this is the problem. It's the darkness, you might say to us. If we lash out against what we perceive as the darkness, we ourselves enter the darkness. So what are we going to do about Donald Trump? Some things are obvious. His consciousness is limited to the 5 senses. This doesn't make him an inferior person. It can make his behavior quite cruel and disconnected. But that's not the same as judgment. That's discernment. The people whom he attracts are also 5 sensory. They're not inferior to anyone, and we are not superior to anyone. There is no such thing. There is nothing in the world more precious or less precious than you. And that applies to everyone who is a soul. In other words, Donald Trump, like you, is a soul. He is an incarnation of a soul, a temporary expression of that soul. And that soul is in the earth school to learn to choose. And that is what the new consciousness allows us to do. Here's another thing that makes the answer to the question, what shall I do about Donald Trump, very interesting. Inside the old consciousness is an uncrossable barrier between in here and out there. You can't climb over it, and it's not going to go away. And from that perspective, it is ridiculous to think that you can change the world by changing yourself. The two are separate, and they'll always be separate. And the dominant factor is the outside. The outside is what determines your consciousness. That barrier is not part of the new consciousness. There is no difference between in here and out there. This is inconceivable, literally inconceivable to a 5-sensory human, but you can see it yourself. We have become accustomed to looking at our experience in terms of parts and relationships between them. But there are no such things, and there never have been. There is one, and all is that. This is where we are now. Our consciousness is moving us in that direction. And not only is external power, the old power in the old consciousness, obsolete from an evolutionary perspective, it does not serve our evolution in any way. It has become toxic, poison. It produces only violence and destruction. You can test this out yourself. You are, moment by moment, each time you choose fear. You create emotional violence when you pursue external power with your friends, with the people around you. Nations create physical violence between one another as they pursue external power. There is no value. There is no outside of the learning that it brings for those who choose it. There is nothing of constructive consequence in pursuing external power. Donald Donald is pursuing external power. This doesn't make him bad. It doesn't make him good. Although he feels he's good, every frightened part feels good about itself. You can test this out. Challenge your own opinions and your own judgments and have a good talk sometime with someone who thinks that the new administration is doing the right thing. Not all of them, but you'll find that many of them believe that. Say, our country's been profligate for so long. It's spending its wealth. We need to cut back on government spending. It's way out of control. We need to protect our borders. We need to protect ourselves. And the people who believe this, some of them are quite frightened. We would call them white supremacists, but they're not. It's frightened parts of their personality who are behaving in a way that the frightened parts of Germans who were Nazis behaved. The most important thing I want to share with you during this podcast is this. We are multisensory. We are souls, and we sense it or we know it, whatever we call it. We are beginning to realize that life itself is precious in every aspect of life. So if I, for one moment, lose track of Donald Trump's humanity, I've just lost track of my own. So when you ask a five-sensory person, what shall I do about Donald Trump? The five-sensory individual will say, more of the same. Let's get him elected again. Except that's illegal. But if you talk to a multisensory personality with the new consciousness, they know that the dynamics, the logics, much more than logic, the very dynamic of their own evolution leaves them no alternative at all. What must they do about Donald Trump? They must love Donald Trump and all those who are drawn to them, to him, and to themselves. Not in a sentimental way, not in a social way, in a spiritual way. We are becoming a spiritual species, and we know that life itself is precious. And if we judge it, we create negative consequences for ourselves. If we're going to change the world, we can't change it with external power because it's built, the world that we have inherited and are experiencing now, for the most part, in our social institutions and in our personal and social practices, was created by a five-sensory species pursuing external power. We can't change that world. It can't be changed with more of the same. If we try to change it by creating another political party or parties or raising more money or getting more votes, we're pursuing external power. We're not changing anything. We can change an administration, but we can't change the world. The world doesn't change until we change, or to make that first person, the world doesn't change until you do. And you say, if you're five-sensory, no, you don't get it. The world is what it is. It's objective. It is reality. And we offer to our five-sensory brothers and sisters love. It's not possible to explain multisensory perception. It comes with a higher order of logic and understanding that originates in the heart. What is meaningful to you? What gives you a sense of purpose and gratitude for being alive? Is it defeating another political party? Is it thinking negatively about another soul in the earth school? If you're 5 sensory, it never will. Meaning will always direct you in yourself toward wholeness. Love doesn't mean mushy love, sentimental love, new age love. Love is inclusive. It accepts. It nurtures. It doesn't push away. What's an example of love? Impersonal love. In the Earth School, our sun is a good example of that. It has a limited lifetime. All scientists know that. But while it's here, it nurtures all of us. It nurtures me. It nurtures Donald. It doesn't say you've got to believe one way or you've got to believe another. It loves. You become like a son. Well, how does that happen? 5 sensory humans, when they pursue external power, they are trying to change the world in order to make themselves feel better. Sometimes they could do it. You want a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you think you can't live without that person, and that person says, I can't live without you either. And suddenly you're feeling good, real good. And then in a half a year, that person says, I've changed my mind. I want to be with someone else. In fact, I'm leaving now to be with someone else. And you plummet into the pits, into the depths. That's happiness. Happiness is the best you can hope to attain by pursuing external power. And it's temporary because it depends upon the external world. When you create authentic power, you begin to experience joy. Joy is not dependent upon the external world. It's not dependent upon anything. Joy is love. Love and fear are mutually exclusive in the Earth School. It's your choice. And it's not a matter of you're choosing the right way or the wrong way. It's a matter of what consequences in your life you're choosing. When you choose to act from fear, to judge, to condemn, to push away, you create painful consequences for yourself. And when you choose to act from love, it's the opposite. You create constructive, inclusive, healthy, blissful experiences for yourself. That's where we are. And every time the world activates a frightened part of your personality, you can say, maybe not to the person that seems to be responsible for it, or that is responsible for it, activating a frightened part of your personality, you can say to yourself, thank you. Because that is the universe's way of bringing your attention to a part of your personality that you need to move beyond the control of in order to give the gifts that you were born to give. That's where your joy and fulfillment and meaning and purpose enter your life. You can't do it in defeating a neighbor, an opponent, a political party, a president, a nation. All of that leads not to disaster, not to catastrophe, but to pain, emotional and physical violence. That is the message. Not the message in the sense of, you should do this, you should do that, you should read this message, you should not read this message, but an offering. That's what we can do for one another, is offer. What are you going to offer? Fear or love? Offering is a loving, usually a loving word. Fear doesn't offer. Fear imposes. If you could live long enough, which a part of you does already, you could ask Genghis Khan, what do you think is the right thing to do? What do you think is your offering? And he'll say, I want Mongolia. I want it all, and I'm going to have it. And he did. Ask Julius Caesar, what's your offering? He'd say, my offering is Rome, the Republic, and the Roman legion is going to take the world and make it Roman. In the lifetime of your parents, the British Empire was once the largest empire on the earth. It's not much anymore. It's just an interesting place to visit when you go to Europe, along with France and Spain and Germany. So what's your offering to the world? Remember, I said earlier, from the multisensory perspective, there's no inside and there's no outside. When you push someone away, when you judge them, when you repel them, you're pushing away a part of yourself. That's why judging others and hating others hurts so much. There is no such thing as an other. This is where our new consciousness is moving us in this direction. When you look at someone else as an other, that's your imagination. That's a realm of illusion. There is no you, yours, his, hers, me, mine. What is. And the Hindus, from Krishna, I think they attribute this, but to probably all of their deities, a phrase, thou art that. Thou art that. What is that? All that is. What can you do if you realize that you're all that is? That is for you to choose. You are choice. You are your perceptions. You're not having them. They're not happening to you. You are your perceptions. You are moving into the new consciousness. Or said another way, the new consciousness is moving into you. And by the time it does, you realize there's no you. These are not meant to be conundrums or puzzles or koans. They're simply the result of expressing a new consciousness in a way that does not permit that is limited by your intellect and by your language. But you are not limited by your intellect or your language or anything else. You always choose, moment by moment by moment, love or fear. Shall you react with fear or respond with love? If you're enjoying anything you're hearing on this podcast, subscribe to it. Now, what do I mean by enjoy? Do I mean, is it entertaining for you? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you forget your worries? That's not what I mean. I mean, do you resonate with anything that I say as relevant, profound, and pertinent for you, not for the world, for you? Something that you can use, something that you can experiment with in your life. If you do, if you resonate, then subscribe, because there's more where this comes from. It comes from the universe, as do you. Now here's your soul step. Take out your notebook, which should be pretty well worn by now. You might want to get another one, a bigger one, and write in it all of the times between now and the next time we're together on this podcast, when you have consciously chosen to respond to someone with love, even if they anger you, even if they insult you, even if they don't understand what you're feeling, and you chose not to act in judgment, in disdain, in superiority. Write that down. And then write all the times you've done the opposite. That comes easily to a frightened part of a personality. It comes easily to millions in this country that want to judge Donald Trump and lose track of their own humanness when they do. When you judge anything, when you push anything away, when you forget that everything is precious, that life is precious, that you are life. It's a delight speaking with you. Sometimes I struggle to express things in ways that will be the most helpful and beneficial. That's always my intention. I suggest that you experiment with that intention yourself. I'm looking forward to being with you again. I always do. I'm Gary Zukav.